Welcome to The Foundry, where leaders are forged daily. Each week we investigate themes of leadership, entrepreneurship, and mindset with some of the greatest minds in real estate. And now, the data scientist of real estate, George Roberts.
Welcome back, investors. Today, I have the pleasure of interviewing Lee Yoder. Lee is the founder of Threefold Investments. He is a practicing, or was a practicing physical therapist when he realized that his true passion was building his own business and investing in real estate. Today, Lee is focused on syndicating larger apartment buildings and is the founder and visionary behind Threefold Real Estate Investing. Lee is committed to using his God-given gifts to forge a path that will generate incredible opportunities for all involved. His focus is driving the business forward by establishing new relationships with top-notch professionals in the real estate world and bring on more partners to invest alongside with Threefold. Lee also hosts a podcast, Threefold Real Estate Investing. Lee and his wife, Hannah, currently reside in Ohio with their 2 children and many farm animals. When he is not working on real estate, Lee enjoys spending time with his family, working to build their homestead and cheering on the Buckeyes and the Bengals. Lee is a man of faith whose greatest desire is to reflect God to his family, within his business, and to all those God places in his path. I want to thank you for coming on the show, Lee, and that is just quite a mouthful there. Can't wait to dig in and parse some of that. But first of all, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me again, George. It's a pleasure to be on.
All right. Okay. So, I think the first thing that I'd like to do is, well, I'll point out, hey, ladies and gentlemen, this is the second time I've interviewed Lee, and I'm in the process of taking some of my best guests and inviting them back. So what we're going to do on this episode, just to make sure you all understand, is that there's not going to be a whole lot of overlap. We're really going to focus on what he's been doing over the last couple of years. So I hope you go back and check out that other interview as well. There's a lot of nuggets you're not going to find here. So first of all, over the last couple of years, you've enjoyed a few exits, and that's really exciting because we're in a business that has expanded extraordinarily rapidly since the Great Recession. A lot of people got knocked out, and a lot of people came in. A lot of people came in with the Jobs Act. Became a lot easier to solicit capital and new ways of doing that too, like crowdfunding. But with all these new players in the space, not everybody has exits. So why don't we just pick up the story there? I believe you had a couple mid-sized exits. Love to hear about those.
Yeah, sure. So we were, in a position just, over a year ago, kind of rolling into 2023. And as we got kind of, toward the end of the first quarter, I guess, we just had a couple projects we thought, it might be the right time to let these go. Things were still selling very well. I mean, a lot of things are still selling very well today. It's still, really tough as a buyer to find a great deal. Sellers are getting great prices. And that was, the case last year. And, one property, George, was in an area we didn't really like. It was the very first syndication we did. And it was in a part of Dayton that's kind of, one of the worst parts of Dayton. And so we got in at a great price, but you have to sell in that same market. I mean, it didn't turn around in 2 years, and we'd only owned that one for 2 years. And then the other one, so anyway, that's kind of why we wanted to get out of that one, because thanks to the market and thanks to, putting a lot of capital into it and bringing it, managing it more professionally than the previous owner, we really had added a lot of value, and we knew we had a lot of equity there. So it's like, man, if we can exit, early, it was about 2.5 years by the time it was all sold. This was a 45 unit. It was a 29 unit and 2 8 units that we bought together. And we didn't sell them together, but we sold them to the same buyer. He just split up into two purchases. But just felt like, man, if we can get out of this area that we don't expect future growth from at a great price, great returns for investors, now's the time to do that. Because it's like, if we can sell well now, we just didn't really feel like in 3 to 5 years we were going to sell for that much more, because again, it's just not a good area. It's not an appreciating area. We've seen so much appreciation because of the post-COVID boom. Let's just take advantage of that. So that's why we sold that one, and really excited to get a great return and kind of get out of that area. The other one was in a good area. So that was definitely harder to let go. The situation with that one was we had a fire at that property. We had a lot of residents that we wanted to let go, and we did, and their units were really rough. So we renovated a lot of units. The fire came along, that helped us renovate even more. We did get, our insurance did take care of us on that. So that was a boost to us getting that insurance money and renovating some stuff after the fire. So and then we had this big tax settlement, which, discussion for another day. Ohio's weird how we do taxes. If you invest in Ohio, you really want to get to know how we do taxes here. But we got hit with a $100,000 tax bill, just a one-time $100,000 gone. So that really hurt. So all that said, George, basically we ran through our reserves and our CapEx fund a lot quicker than we thought we would. And we got to a point where the property was operating very well. We had great debt, great operations, great cash flow, but we ran down our reserves and our CapEx so much that we really did have to hold off on distributions just to build our reserves and our CapEx fund back up and to keep funding these renovations, because people were moving out, and some of them we were kind of like not renewing their leases because they were residents we didn't want at the property. We were really transitioning it from a C class to a B class property. So there were some people we were letting go, and their units were rough, and you don't just want to sit on those. So we were using our cash flow, because again, we ran down that reserve CapEx fund. We're using our cash flow to renovate these units to keep it going. So definitely think that was the right decision, but it is hard when you're no longer giving distributions to the investors. So that went on for about a year, and we were in a position, George, where I said, we either need to recapitalize this property, like bring in, an extra 200,000 to continue this and actually, start cash flowing and doing distributions, but keeping the renovations going, or let somebody else do that. And so I said, well, why don't we just test the market? If we can go get a crazy price that gives our investors an awesome return, let's do that. And the market was able to bear that price. And someone came along with a 1031. Actually, both of those sales were a 1031 buyer. One out of California, one down in Virginia. And they both, wanted to park money in the cash flow areas of Ohio. And so we just got great prices on those, great returns for our investors, and just felt like it was a good time to exit on both of those.
Yeah, a lot of things I'm loving in that answer. I mean, the first is just parking money. What that really calls to mind is the fact that you have different types of you have different types of sellers, you have different types of buyers.
Yep.
And sometimes there are people who are willing to pay a price that may not create a great return, but it might make sense.
Yes.
Because it
right.
avoids a major tax bill, and they may need a like kind property very, very quickly.
Yep.
But very, very cool. I'd love to talk about the local taxes, because to me, this really speaks to what is underwriting. And a lot of, I think, new people just think it's putting numbers in a spreadsheet, but underwriting really begins where you verify the numbers. And what are you doing? Are you secret shopping the rent comps? Did you call up the planning department and see, do they like what you're doing, right? Especially if you're doing redevelopment. How well do you understand the local taxes? Because I know it's interesting. I invest in, for example, Tennessee. It's interesting every year. 1/3 of the state, or 1/3 of the counties, they're going to have an increase in the tax bill. So you got to know where, and that's a kind of an odd way to do it. So with so many people investing, particularly in Columbus, super hot market. Cincinnati's another one. Love Cincinnati myself. So tell us, what would the new investor in Ohio want to know about how taxes are assessed?
Yeah, sure. So Ohio is a non-disclosure state. So you do not have to disclose what you purchased the property for. So if you look my properties up on the county auditor site in the counties that we own in, George, you're going to see that we paid $0 for our properties. So we are able to do what's called an entity transfer, where it hides your purchase price, basically. Okay. So everybody knows that that's going on. So you'll have, we have properties, for instance, the one that, that I was talking about, we got hit. And actually both of those that we sold, we got hit with big tax bills. The other one was a $90,000 tax bill. So for instance, I think that property, we paid $2.8 million for that 47 unit. I think on the auditor site, it may be valued at $500,000. So our taxes are based on a $500,000 value, and we paid $2.8 million for it. So you're like, wow, our taxes could go up 5 times, right? I mean, almost 6 times. It's unlikely, but that's kind of what you're worried about. So what happens is the local school board will come and say, hey, Lee, we know that you paid a lot more for this property. It's not that hard to figure out. So we're gonna argue to the auditor to reassess your property value and raise your taxes so that we get more tax money as the local school. Or you can pay us off and you can just pay us a settlement. So that's where that $100,000 tax bill came in. It's much better for us to say, okay, what do you want? And they're like, we want, basically what they were asking for was 3 years worth of makeup on the tax income they should have received if our property was valued for what we bought it for. So that's how they come up with that, basically $33,000 per year. And hey, that's, $100,000. We want $100,000, and then we won't go to the auditor. So that's what we did. And so that, man, you hit the nail on the head, George. In your underwriting, if you don't understand how much your taxes could go up or what some of the risks are with school boards. Now, we did pass a law in Ohio in that summer of 2022 when I was getting hit up with this, that does make it a little bit harder for schools to do this. You have to pass it through their board. They can't take the settlement. It does have to go to the auditor. So that has gone away a little bit, but it's still there. That can happen, but also, and we're very similar, George. I actually don't know if it's just a third of the counties, but I know the counties that we live in the state of Ohio, we also reassess every 3 years. Actually, every 6 years every other third year, it's a simple reassessment. And then every other third year, so every 6 years, it's a full reassessment. And so in 2023, the counties that we invest in, all the ones here in Southwest Ohio, we did the full reassessment. And I'll tell you, I mean, we have a lot of properties where, they're valued that much less, but we just got 10 to 15% tax increases. So that's typically how it goes, but we have high tax rates. So it's just, I hate the system, George. I wish we were a disclosure state, and then our tax rate was like 1% instead of where it's at. It's like 3% in a lot of counties. So it's a really high tax rate, but your property's valued much less than it actually, is worth and what you paid for it. And so we just play this game, but you've got to know that game when you're underwriting. You got to know what you're getting into and where you could go in, and your taxes could double. That absolutely could happen. And you mentioned Columbus. I mean, Columbus is one of the hottest markets. So the school boards there know how hot it is. They know how much values have gone up. They know how much tax money is out there. And so they've been more aggressive in the tax increases in Columbus. I understand. I don't invest there yet, but they've had, bigger tax increases because they've, have had more appreciation there. So it's something you really have to be ready for when you purchase your property. You might look like, oh my gosh, my tax bill is great. I can't believe I only have to pay $100,000 a year. Well, I mean, in truth, it could double next year after you buy it.
Right. Yeah, it reminds me of the mafia coming to your storefront and saying hey, you need protection. You tell them you don't need protection. Well, then they'll show you the next day why you need protection, right? So,
exactly. Yeah.
Well, it also speaks to contingencies. I mean, contingencies are huge. That's one of the things that separates your experienced investor from the novice. Novice just doesn't plan for contingencies like that or put enough margin of safety into the deal. Say, I'm only going to pull the trigger if there's enough margin of safety that, boom, we get hit with something like $100,000. And, we're not only surviving, but we're able to still complete our CapEx and, still have a win. So I hope people are listening to that. But I love that you're mentioning Dayton as not being a great market, because I feel that maybe over the last couple of years, some people may have started to look at Dayton potentially as a better market. Have your opinions about Dayton changed at all over the last couple of years?
I don't mean to say it's not a good market. I still think it's a good market. It's a cash flow market though, George. I mean, and so the area that I invested in Dayton was not a good area. It was like the worst area of Dayton. But then the other one that I sold, where I said was in a good area, that was in Dayton as well. So there's some great areas of Dayton. I do think, Dayton is a smaller market. It's not a growth market. There's not a ton of jobs flooding in, but it's got a solid airport. It's sandwiched between Columbus, Indianapolis, and Cincinnati. We've got, Interstate 70 that runs, from Indianapolis to Columbus, 2 awesome markets, and Dayton sits right in the middle. And then, you go down, it's Cincinnati. I guess if you go north, Georgia, and then we're getting up your area in Detroit. So Dayton is surrounded by good areas. It is not as good as any of those areas. It's just because it's smaller. It's a less liquid market. But you can cash flow really well there. That's where we're finding better deals right now. Like, getting in at a good cost basis. And that means a lot to us because we want to be able to cash flow as well as have a good back end. And, I don't see good cash flow in Columbus and Indianapolis based on the prices I'm seeing stuff sell for. So Dayton can be a great market, but just know what you're getting into.
Yeah, I love it. Well, speaking of cash flow markets, I'm from Detroit, so I know how it is.
Yep.
Some of these rougher markets, they don't tend to appreciate a whole lot, but then, well, that means that at your cost basis, you could be making, decent cash flow if you're willing to deal with some roughness. So
Yep.
yeah, a bit of a trade-off there. One of the things that I like the best, though, about investing is there's not just one way to make money. Can't say that cash flow market is good or bad. It's all what you're into.
Yeah.
But yeah, market timing too important. No one really can time the market, but you know how it is. You can tell when it's a good time to sell. You can never say that it's not going to be better in 6 months, for example. But in any event, as they say, pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered.
Right.
We'll talk about farm animals later, though. All right, good stuff. Well, hey, maybe we'll take a step back. I usually like to save the biographical questions and not just start, like how you start out and single, yeah, 1,000 interviews like that. But I do always like to ask people, say you're at a cocktail party and people ask, hey, what do you do? How do you answer the question?
Yeah, that's a good question. We syndicate apartments. We pool together investors who want to invest in real estate, and we buy apartment buildings with them. And then now, we operate those ourselves with our property management company. So we purchase and then therefore we own and operate apartment buildings, and we do that with investors who want to invest their capital with us.
Yeah, beautiful. Love it. Love it. Well, I know another thing that you've done over the last couple of years is you went from third-party management to in-house property management. And that's a great transition that many people go through. At a certain point, you get to a certain size, you just realize, hey, this is potentially a separate wing of the business, and you decided to go for it. So tell us how that's working out for you.
Yeah, it's really working out pretty good, George. It's not something I ever wanted to do. I mean, I really resisted it. I would, talk on my podcast, frequently, and when I'm on another podcast, like, don't do property management. It's a hard business. It's terrible. I don't want to do it. I'll never do it. I like working with third party, and not that that's all gone away and totally reversed. We got to a spot, and I think this is what happens with a lot of guys and girls that are in our space, George, is like, we just started getting more and more frustrated with the third party property management company we were working with. And then also feeling more confident that, like, we've been around this long enough, like we could do this. When I first got into multifamily, that definitely wasn't the case. I mean, I was like, man, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm so scared of having to manage it myself. Bringing on third-party management when we got our very first multifamily, which we had a duplex that we managed ourselves, and that wasn't that bad. It was in our hometown. But then we got a 16-unit, and I was thrilled to be able to partner with a property management company that took care of all that stuff. But, that was in 2019. So, 4 years later, 2023, it's like, this isn't that hard. We've been around it long enough. I think we could do it. And I actually think we could do it better. Not because we're, more skilled or more knowledgeable than them. We're not. But we're just going to be more focused on our properties. We were working with a property management company that manages about 12,000 units, and we were like 300 of those. That's really a small percentage. Right? That's a very small percentage. So, the focus for them is all, on a bunch of other properties as well as ours. And so, yeah, we just got more confident we could do it ourselves, got frustrated. And so then it came down to, we were purchasing another property. That property, the owner was self-managing. His brother lived on site, and his brother was basically his maintenance guy and his property manager. And the more we dug in, the more we realized this guy's doing a great job. And so I just felt like God was really opening some doors to lead us toward at least trying out property management. So I said, why don't we just try it on this property? We've got this guy. He lives there. It seems like he's doing a great job. Let's try it. I mean, how hard can it be on this one? And guess what? If it fails, then we'll go find a property management company. So we tried it out. It was actually a 48 unit that we bought that he was living on, but we bought a 16 unit at the same time, and they're close, so we run them together. So we call that a 64 unit, and we tried it out on that, last summer, and it was going well, George. It went really well. This guy was great. He was great to work with, and so soon, it wasn't a month or two later, we were buying another property, a 96 unit, and the property management company was a little bit outside of their territory with this property. So the people that they had kind of inherited from the previous owner, they were fine letting those people go. So it was like, all right, here we go again. And this time we're going to inherit two people, a property manager and a maintenance guy. They both seemed good. So it was like, all right, we've kind of built everything out. Why don't we go ahead and use all the same systems? And why don't we keep these people on and manage this one? And so we did that, George, and then, sold two that we owned. And so we're only left with two that the third party management company was managing. So then we brought those in house. And, there's economies of scale in property management. So it's better to have more properties. Now we're still way too spread out. It's just now another reason why I want to buy more property and buy them in the same area. And so we can have properties close to each other. So we can share maintenance guys. This maintenance guy's off, they can borrow from the other property. And so that's really the benefit of building a big portfolio in an area. And so we've got a lot of reason to want to do that. But yeah, that's kind of why and how it worked out a little bit of bringing property management in-house last year.
Yeah, I love it. And the story of having a smaller property and having somebody on site. That's the problem, right? You can you can't pay somebody to be on site. It's not economical.
Yeah.
But when you have somebody, and usually the mold I find is that somebody who's been in maintenance, usually older, retired. And you have somebody like that who just wants to keep busy, and it makes a lot of sense. No commute. You're working in your own complex. Those situations can work out very, very well. Newer investors, I want to caution you always need boots on the ground. Lee is from Ohio, so it's totally okay. I know you can see your own properties, but then it's a huge bonus if you can get somebody on site. And then that's something that can't always be replicated. It's definitely a value add. So you're able to sell the property like that. I know that when I bought properties like that, it's definitely been comforting to know that there's somebody that's going to be able to take care of the place, hopefully for several years. One of the benefits of being your own property manager with the professional companies, the third parties, it's a little harder to convince them that it makes sense. And then, they still want to be paid top dollar. So there's no real incentive at that point. So, but anyway, great story. Great story. I mean, I wouldn't tell people self-manage or don't self-manage, but I feel that the people who are cut out for the self-management, they know who they are. So if you think you're ready for that, step out.
Not for everybody.
I know a lot of us, I don't know, perhaps at a certain point in my life might have enjoyed that, but definitely I feel like I'm too old to be knocking on doors and calling on people. It's a little bit like babysitting. I got my own kids.
Yes, that's right. Yep.
So Foundry listeners, thank you so much. We're going to wrap up the first half here. Lee, just want to make sure everybody knows how to get in touch with you. What's the best way to do that?
Sure. You can definitely find me on LinkedIn. So just look up Lee Yoder on LinkedIn and then jump on our website, threefoldrei.com. We got a bunch of stuff there. So you can jump on our website and connect with us through there.
All right, great. Well, hey, stick with us for the next episode in this series. Lee is going to talk about how he brought property management in-house. We're going to talk a little bit about seller financing, and we're going to get to know Lee a little bit better with some sort of whimsical questions. I think you're going to love it. Thank you, listeners. Catch you on the flip side.